Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about experiencing unparalleled engineering efficiency with InTouch OMI. This is all centered around system platform and obviously the new InTouch OMI client. So with that in mind, I thought it just important just to mention a few points about system platform, why system platform, just a bit of basis, because I understand that not everybody understands the differences between our system platform products and a standard tag-based solution like InTouch or some of the competitors. So really what we're talking about here is a complete platform. So it still has the same functionality as InTouch in terms of device connectivity. So it uses the same drivers, and it's agnostic, so it connects to anything, anywhere, even as small as things like the very low-powered, low-cost devices at the bottom end. The idea of this is that once you've got this platform in place, there's a lot more you can do with system platform, and there's a technology behind it which makes it object-based. I'll go on to talk about that in a bit more detail shortly. But that extensibility stretches out to like a toolkit capability for a huge ecosystem of partners that develop their own solutions that integrate really neatly with the system platform product. And also what we can start to talk about with system platform is getting up into that enterprise layer. So things like your ERP systems and bringing work orders from your ERP layer down to your shop floor. So then just based on that object-based design, what we're talking about here is a designing templates. So templates represent assets. So in the middle there you can see like a pump as an example. And it's really just a virtual representation of a physical device or asset. So the difference here is that we're associating everything alongside that. So when you create a template, you associate any inputs and outputs to the PLC, you associate any graphics that are relevant to that particular device, any faceplates, etc., etc. Everything's contained within the same environment, and what that means is you can have very rapid deployment from a scalability perspective, or certainly rapid change management, because if you create lots of instances from that template, then you want to change all those instances, you make it at template level and it propagates through to the rest of them. It's a very neat way to work, it's a very structured approach, and this is, I suppose, how it differentiates between a simple tag-based solution and an object-based. So tag-based, are very, very flat base structures. There's not very much association other than maybe a naming convention. With InTouch we use something called super tags, which just tries to organize it a little bit better. But the object-based design is really that flow and that nice way of working. System platform also organizes the system into a plant model. So the plant model is, again, just it's a virtual representation of essentially the physical layout of your facility. So if you start at like an enterprise layer, perhaps go down to site, so that's the site name, then onto an area which is a particular region, and then perhaps a work center like a line, and then we're actually putting our assets under those line names. The point behind this is that you can understand the physical location of where things reside because you walk around your facility on a regular basis. So again, it makes sense to make this structured approach to the design and adopting these methodologies, and there's some good reason behind that, which I'll talk to a bit later on when we get onto InTouch OMI, and how we reduce those engineering costs. So then just lastly on system platform, I mentioned a little bit about this platform that we can create. So we have our device at the bottom layer, we have the same integration servers in the middle, we've obviously then got our platform and with all of our real-time solutions in there, and then we have our client tools that will make it further extensible. So it might be visualization clients, so InTouch or InTouch OMI, which I'll come on to. A bit about perhaps business intelligence, manufacturing execution systems, getting work orders and things from that ERP layer at the top down to your shop floor, batch management, or even business process management if you want to make it forever extensible. So you want to do things like workflows based on events or occurrences that have happened on the plant. You can do it with a product like that. But this is in an industrial form rather than having to just your typical IT-based system, because that's where a lot of BPM workflows have come from. So we have that, and then what we've also started to branch out into is the cloud type scenarios, and we can store data from pretty much any level in that bottom layer of the stack up to a cloud-based solution, so you can visualize that data anywhere. I'm not going to touch any more on any of this. It's really just a brief overview of system platform. What I would like to go into is a bit about how we've really changed or made it easier to use, which has always been at the forefront of the mind at each release. And one way they've done that is with Orchestra graphics. Orchestra graphics are something that are really important to get on board with if you haven't done already. They've been around for a very long time now, so since 2010, so we're talking 8 years worth of development with these. They've got all the good things in there, like the vector base, so they scale really nicely. You can use .NET functionality inside of them. The controls you use inside of them are now .NET rather than ActiveX as we used to use. But the idea is that once you've developed them once, you can reuse them throughout any application you're using. So that might be a standalone InTouch application. You can use those Orchestra graphics there. It could be part of a wider system platform environment. You might want to render them inside of a HTML browser, which we have that functionality to be able to deliver that in quite a few variances now. It's really important, and it's even more important when you get to this InTouch OMI level, because it's only Orchestra graphics that are supported in this environment. If you've already been doing it, then great. They'll port over really nicely, or they'll be able to be used really nicely. If not, then you need to move to that environment. One of the other things is they have introduced like an automation set of objects. The 2014 R2 release, which is the one before this 2017 release, it introduced symbol wizards. So what this allowed you to do was drag and drop graphics on the screen and then alter the appearance of them at that point in time. So when you drop it on, you could say, I want it either horizontal or vertical, I want to add alarm limits, etc., etc. This 2017 release actually introduces object wizards. So it takes it a little bit further. So rather than just having the symbol wizards where you can just draw graphics, we now unify this with things like faceplates, objects, and the actual symbol wizards are included in there. So this is really a library for generic process control, which includes the equipment, the instruments, and the valves. So again, it can then reduce your engineering effort because a lot of that work has been done for you. But rather than having just a single object, the object wizards mean that when you drop a graphic on screen or you create in the objects, you can choose between lots of different options in there. So there's lots of different combinations you can pick from to make sure that it's right for your environment. The library is split up like this. So the graphics that you see on the left-hand side, this is something that has been around since 2014 R2, and it's a symbol library, and it comes with every Galaxy that you install, every project that you use, and one of the default set of libraries that comes with this is the situational awareness library. And you will have obviously heard us talk about this before. So those situational awareness graphics are, it's a design concept. It's not saying that other vendors don't do this kind of thing. We just provide you with all that information out of the box to be able to put these graphics on screen really simply. But what these objects and these object wizards and this asset library that we're referring to, they form part of that structure, and you can see the way that it breaks into the objects there on the right-hand side. So that equipment, meters, and valves represent our equipment, instruments, and assets on the right-hand side. So what we can now get is, much more from our system very, very simply. And I've got a few examples here. So this shows us a representation on the left there for a level 3 meter, or perhaps a level 2 meter below it, or even the trend at the bottom layer. These are the graphic representations that you can choose when you create one of the instances from those templates in that asset library that exists that I was just showing you. You also get the faceplates with it. So for example there you can see we're showing the PID faceplates for a flow control loop. This one there you can see in particular shows the controller mode and all the settings with the PID loop and the trend at the bottom there. And then in the middle you can have things like alarm states, and on the right hand side we have things like trackers and operating ranges, etc. I will show you a demo of the demo assets, or the assets that exist in the environment, on a demo system that I'll have a bit later on towards the end. So I suppose with that, how have Wonderware achieved this, or how are Wonderware developing this? Well, the first thing is that it's taken years of preparation. So you hear lots of these new features and functionality coming out of the solution. It's no guess as to how they've got there, and it's things like Orchestra Graphics being developed 8 years ago. This was setting them up to be able to do these types of clever things as we go into the latest technologies. I've already briefly mentioned that situational awareness library. This is obviously it's very feature rich. There's lots of graphics in there. There's lots of combinations that you can deploy to that system. They've also introduced things like automatic linking of I/O addresses, so that allows you to import a load of your templates, a load of your instances and objects, loads of your I/O, and you can link it to specific topic names, so that if you have things like symbolic references in your PLC, so you have one of the more modern type controllers, because that features and things like UDTs, it's very similar to the object-based design that you'd set up inside a system platform. So when you compare the two and you set them up in a very similar fashion, it's very, very easy to link that I/O address. And there's lots of detail on how we achieve that. They've also introduced something called auto build. Auto build allows you to suck the items out of certain PLCs. At the moment, it only works with Siemens PLCs, but they are going to be doing it with Allen Bradley soon, so we can expect a release on there. And what that does is literally suck out all the items and puts them all inside a system platform. So if you've got them set up in the same UDT format as in your PLC, it'll create the right structure inside of your system platform environment automatically. We've touched on object wizards already, and then lastly what they've started to do is move into some of these latest technologies. And the technologies that they're using for this new client is Windows Presentation Foundation and Windows Communication Foundation. It means that it can do much more with the solution. So in terms of the product stack, the older environment, 2014 R2, was that one on the left-hand side, so you'd have your historian in there, your application server for the brains of it, and then your InTouch system platform. If you migrated and kept it exactly the same, nothing would change. You'd keep InTouch system platform at that top end as that visualization piece, and keep running from there. But what they've now done is introduce this next generation client, the InTouch Operations Management Interface, which is their next generation of SCADA, using these new technologies, and the way that, or the reason that they've done this is to make things simpler for you. So the object wizards were a key for that, being able to make it simple to drag and drop new assets on the screen. But then from a application design point of view, it's much more flexible. So things like developing multi-monitors, and things like physically drawing the screens, they are out-of-the-box functionality to be able to deliver these kind of things. And then the whole point behind IT and OT convergence, we're talking about bringing more systems into this one system platform environment. So they've already introduced some applications for the InTouch OMI. So applications are something that delivers something to that client environment in context. If we take the trends as a very good example, they released something called Historian Insight, which is a new client tool for Historian, a local on-premise version. You may have heard of the online version. So the on-premise version links really nicely into this. You drop the app on the screen. There's zero configuration required and zero scripting. If it's part of a faceplate that belongs to your more detailed view of your particular process, it will automatically put in the process data for that particular detailed information. So for a tank or something like that, a particular asset that you might have on your plant, you'd see all of that process data automatically inside of that trend. But not only would you see that, you'd also see any alarms that have occurred as halos over the top of that process data. It'd also show you who's acknowledged it, when they acknowledged it. All this type of information is now built into that solution. They've also done something called, well, they've introduced maps into this using a different app. This allows for the same orchestra graphics, so using the same functionality, to drop those graphics onto a map that everybody understands. So if you have things that are geographically distributed, it makes it very easy to pinpoint where that happens. Because if you see things like alarm borders appearing over those graphics, it's very easy and naturally easy to navigate through to the particular asset that has that issue. I mentioned a bit about multi-monitor. So there's actually, here they've equated a 90% reduction in time to develop multi-monitor. It really is such a simple task now. You really have to use the environment to really believe how easy that is. It's a case of a couple of tick boxes. Do you want it to be touchscreen? Tick a box. Do I want to have 2 points of contact for control purposes, for security? So I'm not going to be clicking things accidentally, in which case, again, it's just another tick box. Lots of things in there. The navigation is completely automatic, so there's zero scripting for that. There's zero buttons you have to draw on screen, which I'm sure you've all felt that pain of in the past, and then it asks you to go and change it, and there's loads of places you need to make those changes. Doesn't matter with this new application. I'll show you an example of that in the demo, but basically it works off your plant model. So the plant model that we understand, because it's the physical route around our plant, as I was mentioning earlier, it drags that plant model in, and then you understand what assets live where, so it's very easy to navigate around it. And it gives you 100% coverage over any resolution or screen type. So whereas our graphics, in terms of orchestra graphics, haven't been tied to a resolution because of vector-based, the entire environment is now not tied to resolution. So you can develop in one version or develop in one resolution, and you can run it on a different resolution. Obviously, you need to try and keep your aspect ratio to some sort of similar degree, but if you didn't, then there's layouts that you can create that make it easy to differentiate between the two. When I say layouts, there's a good example of how you create those layouts here. So again, gone are the days where you have to create a window with X pixels wide and X pixels high, and put it at a particular place in your environment to deliver that. You simply add sections inside of this layout editor and separate it out as you see fit. And then in terms of the view app editor, this is a good example of how you'd see that. So there's lots of content that you can drag in there. We can see the navigation app on the left-hand side that's showing you what's being displayed where. We can see what layout we're using. It's a very different way of working, but when you get your head around how this all fits together, it actually makes engineering it much, much simpler. So with that, I'm going to jump into a demo, and hopefully you can see our Wonder Wine demo on here. So this is actually something that comes with the system platform environment, so it's something you can download and use yourselves. This is just the new InTouch OMI interface. You can see things like alarms being listed inside of my breadcrumb there. As I navigate through the environment, that breadcrumb automatically populates. That's another application. This title bar at the top is another application. If I look at my navigation, I've got it on a sliding pane, so I'm not taking up real estate on the screen to be able to deliver that. And you can see I've got my object model that exists inside of here. And if I go on to asset demos, what I have inside of it is a load of the demos from that asset library that we were just shown before. So if we just take an example of an agitator here, and it could be something quite simple like just a simple start and stop. That's all I have the capability to deliver there. But actually I want something that's a bit more complex in terms of a faceplate, so I'm also going to include now things like the VSD that is included there. So just a bit more detail, but again, this is out of the box. We're talking things that exist as part of this asset library. And I'm showing you that in a pop-up rather than as part of a faceplate that you see on the right-hand side. But what I'd do is just take you through a couple of different examples, because these are the devices. But if I just flick through into the PID loops that I have here, and then if I click on something like this, you can see that we get the faceplate appear on the right-hand side. So with the ability to, yes, we can still do pop-ups as I suppose we're normally used to, but because we now have much more real estate, it's very, very easy to include a lot more details on the screen, so we can see a very detailed view of that PID loop on the right with all those settings there. And then lastly, we have our devices at this bottom layer. So here there's obviously lots of different valves and valve groups that exist, and very, very similar. We have lots of different faceplates that exist as part of that. But it's all dynamically built up, and all that asset library is built into that system. There's a whole host of documentation that exists as part of this. Just clicked on the wrong thing. Just bear with me. So as part of the demo, there is a huge PDF document here, and this PDF includes all the I suppose the domain objects that we've just been referring to. It goes over things like how you configure them, how you use them, how to use the visual build element to them. So there's a way that you can just drop these assets on the screen in terms of a graphical point of view, and it will create everything else in the background for you. It will basically tell you everything about the graphics that's available to them, things like the I/O, any I/O that's associated to it. So there's lots of detail in there, showing you all of that information. So with that, we do have a tech day next month in our offices. So if you do want to know more, we are going to be focusing quite a lot more on system platform as part of that. So certainly sign up to that event and come along to it. We're also going to be showing you some of our a complete solution from hardware all the way up to our system platform environment, and we're also going to start to look at some of the cloud functionality that we started to introduce, things like OEE that have become quite a seamless and very, very simple task to achieve in that cloud. And there will also be, there are morning sessions in terms of presentations, but the afternoon you like to get hands-on and start to use some of those products, so it's very useful for you guys.